The hallway camera catches it in perfect, merciless clarity. A 17-year-old girl, blood streaming from her split lip, crawls across the polished floor while the star picture of Ridgewood High looms over her with a Louisville Slugger raised like he's waiting on a fastball. The crowd of students forms a silent, phone-lit circle, too afraid to intervene. He screams, "Stay down, loser," and brings the bat down hard enough to crack tile. But the bat never lands, because at that exact second, every fire alarm in the building explodes into life, lights strobe red, and the sprinklers unleash a biblical rain that sends everyone slipping and screaming in every direction. In the chaos, the battered girl locks eyes with someone standing at the far end of the corridor, a woman in a black raincoat, soaked to the bone, face unreadable. The picture never sees her coming. By the time the water stops and the police arrive 23 minutes later, the school is already burning, half the football team is in handcuffs, and the woman is gone. They will spend the next month trying to figure out who she was, and why every security camera in the building went blind the moment she walked in. This is the story the kids of Ridgewood High still whisper about. The day the new girl got beaten half to death, and her mother turned an ordinary suburban high school into a war zone. Her name was Mia Delgado. 17 years old, 5'3" on a tall day, quiet voice, dark eyes that seemed to carry too much mileage for a junior in high school. She and her mom had rolled into town 3 weeks earlier in a dusty gray Suburban without of state plates and no story anyone could pin down. They rented the small blue house on Maple Crest that had sat empty since the foreclosure. Mia enrolled mid-semester, kept her head down, and made the fatal mistake of being pretty in a school that already had a queen. Brooke Hightower ruled the senior class the way small dictators rule small countries, with beauty, money, and the casual cruelty that comes from never being told no. Her boyfriend, Tyler "Ty" Rawlins, was 6'4", 220 pounds of varsity jacket and steroid rage, who believed the world had been built for him to swing at. When Mia accidentally bumped Brooke's shoulder in the lunch line on her 4th day and didn't apologize fast enough, the target was painted. It started with shoves into lockers, escalated to having her backpack dumped in the toilet, and ended, everyone thought, with the hallway ambush. Everyone filmed, but no one stopped. They cornered her after 7th period. Ty, 3 linemen, Brooke filming on her rose gold iPhone, and a dozen onlookers who suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. The first punch doubled Mia over. The second put her on the floor. Ty picked up the bat he'd been carrying for practice and told her one more time to stay down. That was when the lights died, the sirens screamed, and the sprinklers turned the corridor into a blinding, freezing hurricane. No one saw the woman in the raincoat move. They only saw the aftermath. Tyler woke up zip, tied to a railing with his own shoelaces, jaw swollen shut. Brooke was found locked inside the janitor's closet, barefoot, mascara rivers down her face, screaming that someone had whispered her worst secret through the door before the lock clicked. The 3 linemen were discovered in the equipment room, hanging upside down from the basketball hoops by their own practice jerseys, too terrified to explain how they got there. Every phone that had recorded the beating was wiped clean, every last frame gone like it had never existed. By the time the fire trucks rolled in, the administrative wing was already in flames. Not a big fire, just enough to destroy 10 years of disciplinary records, every hard drive in the principal's office, and the trophy case that held Ty's most valuable predator, plaque from the year before. Someone had used thermite. Someone who knew exactly where the cameras were and where they weren't. The police found a single line spray painted across the gym wall in dripping crimson. "Ye are Nazi and hail men and ice." That was the first time anyone said the name out loud. Sergeant Elena Delgado, U.S. Army Ranger, retired, 75th Ranger Regiment, 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in places that never made the news. The woman who had vanished from Fort Benning 8 months earlier after her daughter was nearly killed in a different school, a different state, a different cover story that ended with a coach in the hospital and a principal who suddenly retired to Costa Rica. The Army had listed her AWL. The news had called her a ghost. Mia had simply called her mom. Ridgewood High never saw her coming because no one ever does. She had spent 20 years learning how to walk into a place, map every exit, every sightline, every weakness, and disappear before the echo of her boots faded. When the call came, when Mia's broken voice whispered, "They won't stop," over a burner phone, Elena was already halfway across the country. She didn't come to ask for justice. She came to collect it. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in controlled chaos. She never raised her voice. She never had to. On the second night, the football coach opened his garage to find his prized '67 Mustang raised on cinder blocks, tires slashed, and the word "TOUC" carved into the hood. Because 2 years earlier he had looked the other way when a freshman said Ty grabbed her in the locker room. Every school board member woke up to a manila envelope on their porch containing printed screenshots of texts they thought had been deleted. Texts arranging donations in exchange for keeping certain athletes eligible. The principal found his office door welded shut from the inside. When they finally cut it open, the only thing left on his desk was his resignation letter already signed. And through it all, Elena moved like smoke, a shadow on a rooftop, a silhouette behind the wheel of a car that was never the same color twice. She didn't hurt any kids, never laid a hand on anyone under 18. She didn't have to. She broke the adults who had built a kingdom on looking away, and she did it so precisely that when the feds finally descended on the town, half the faculty was already lawyered up and the other half was begging to cooperate. The final confrontation happened at dawn on the football field. Ty, still swollen and furious, had rallied what was left of his crew for some kind of stand. They waited under the lights with baseball bats and bravado, ready to film their revenge for the internet. They never heard the footsteps. 1 second they were 6 angry boys on AstroTurf. The next they were on their knees in zip cuffs, while a lone woman in a black hoodie stood 10 yards away, arms loose at her sides, watching them the way a wolf watches rabbits that finally realize the fence is gone. Ty spat blood and screamed, "You can't do this! You're just some psycho mom!" Elena tilted her head. "No," she said, voice calm enough to carry across the silent field. "I'm the consequence your parents kept telling you didn't exist." Then she turned her back on them, actually turned her back, and walked away while the first sirens closed in. By the time the cruisers screeched through the gate, she was already gone, swallowed by the tree line like she'd never been there at all. Mia healed. Slowly, the scars on her face faded to thin white lines she wore like medals. She graduated 2 years later with honors, gave a commencement speech about the cost of silence that left half the audience in tears and the other half staring at their shoes. She never saw her mother again after that morning on the field, but every year on the anniversary of the sprinklers, an unmarked envelope appeared in her mailbox containing a single photograph, Elena somewhere far away, always near water, always looking straight into the lens like she was saying, "I'm still watching." Ridgewood High never recovered. They tore down the old building, built a new one with better cameras, stricter policies, and a zero-tolerance rule that everyone actually followed this time. They named the new library after a girl who had once been too afraid to speak up. The freshman Ty had hurt years before, and in the courtyard there's a small bronze plaque no one can quite explain. It just reads, "Some mothers teach you how to stand up. Some mothers make the world stand down." If you walk past it at night, sometimes the motion lights don't come on. Sometimes students swear they see a woman in a dark raincoat standing just beyond the fence, checking that the new generation is doing better than the last. Then the wind moves and she's gone. And that, my friends, is the true story of the day a quiet new girl got broken in a hallway, and her mother reminded an entire town that monsters don't always hide under the bed. Sometimes they hide in plain sight, wearing Letterman jackets and smiles, until someone trained to hunt real monsters comes home. So tell me in the comments, when is it okay for a parent to cross the line? When is silence no longer neutral, but complicity? And most importantly, would you have had the courage to step into that hallway, or would you have been one more phone raised, recording instead of helping? If this story hit you in the chest the way it hit me telling it, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear that the quiet ones sometimes carry the loudest thunder, and subscribe for more cinematic stories that don't just entertain. They remind us what we're capable of when someone we love is on the floor. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and never, ever underestimate a mother's love. See you in the next one.